So let's start out by talking about how Race to Crashpoint Tower made us feel.
Yeah. Which is a fairly short book.
It's a junior novel.
Perhaps to the detriment, because I feel like sometimes things just went real fast, and I was like, wait, what happened?
Yeah. Now, to preface for anybody that's here that hasn't watched or read any of the High Republic, this book is interesting in that, you know how sometimes you watch a really cool movie and then like they start to franchise and they start to do stuff, and you're like, hey, you know, like these characters, this is what they were doing when they weren't on screen.
When they weren't over here at this stuff.
Yeah. So this book is about a very small amount of time between the last book
kind
that
of
we
like
watched.
in the middle of the last
kind
book
of in
that
the
we
middle,
read.
and it's kind of like a side adventure with some of the other characters. So as long as we preface with that, I will agree that there was times where I was kind of like, maybe I brought too much expectation to it.
Well, especially
like,
the last book.
Yeah, but like what it is was a short, sweet novel about some kids.
Yeah, sure.
Doing their part in what is a traumatizing, traumatic event for the High Republic, you know?
Sure.
Which those two, like, tones, which is, like, more junior novel and just how terrible the event on the Republic Fair was in the last novel, I thought as I was listening to it, it started to clash for me. But at a certain point, that went away. And I just kind of, like, embraced it. And I enjoyed it a lot more after that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes much sense, but
maybe.
You know, it's kind of the clashing tones. It's like watching Andor and then going right into Clone Wars. It's like, hey, something's not. It's not a perfect transition here. You know,
okay.
There's a tone and there's a feel, and I feel like I felt that a little bit reading the book.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean maybe a little bit. I can get what you mean. There's definitely a point where I'm like, oh, I like what they're doing with this part here.
Yeah.
But no, the book it's kind of cool because this one is being in the High Republic, but we don't have our comic book readings out yet that we did for the High Republic, which they are coming. They're being worked on, and they'll be out soon.
So these we have characters in here from those comic books, and we have experienced them, and we'll get those videos out as soon as we can. But those are those are harder to get out. We're trying to get now the Acolyte is over, it's a little bit of a break. We'll be able to really schedule that stuff out.
Yeah. So the cool thing with this book is it's pulling a character from, I think, the last junior novel that we read, which was oh man, I'm spacing on it. Not After Into the Dark.
The last novel that we read?
Not the last one. That was The Rising Storm.
Yeah.
There was a junior novel before that we read. The one that had Vernestra.
Yes, it was called. Was it Into the Dark?
No, Into the Dark was before that one.
Okay.
There's another one.
Why am I forgetting it right now?
Test of Courage. That's it. Thank you,
Test of
Nexus.
Courage. You know what? I'm kind of glad that we've now gotten through a decent amount of the High Republic, and I'm messing up the titles.
Yeah. So I'm like, but it's pulling a character from that we met, which also shows up in the Acolyte. We're pulling Lula and Zine from some comics and stuff that we've seen already, and also it touches on a little bits of their story from those as well, and then also the Rising Storm being pulled in a little bit into this too, because that's kind of the location is from the Rising Storm. And then we get a few new characters tossed in that we follow along with, which I thought was interesting, kind of like just bringing elements of High Republic all into this book.
Yeah.
And it being a junior novel that, I don't know, possibly for me, like if I was just like, wow, it's a junior novel, like I could imagine myself being like, well, I won't read that one. I'm going to read, these ones here, the adult novels. And maybe I'll go back to that one later on, There's different things in the EU where I'm like, well, I'll read this, but I read those when I was a kid. I'm not gonna read any more of those ones right now. I'm gonna read these ones,
Sure.
So it was neat to see like some of these things kind of culminating, coming together.
It was. I think it's especially having the younger kids being the feature, and then we have the the returning bad guys in the Nihil, but we also have the Dringer in this.
Yeah.
And there was something about having like these younger kids fighting the Dringer that made them scarier to me. And I was trying to figure out why. I feel like, especially kids, like you have evolution has done this to us, but you have a fear of the dark, you have the fear of monsters, you have the fear of seeing eyes and teeth, like that pattern, the fear of being eaten. I mean, on Earth, that's how life goes on. You eat other life.
Well, in this, they're like, no, they're plants and they eat people.
Yeah.
Or people!
But they eat people. But it's like, I think the added scariness to me is that, like, I don't eat anything I talk to. Like, the Dringer can talk to you and tell you that they're going to eat you. And they, like, just the way they do it is just so, I don't know, frightening to me as as an animal on Earth that is constantly being like, literally, you eat or you are eaten.
When you say talk to, do you mean like it talks back and you can actually understand it? As opposed to like, because like you said before, you raise cows and I was just thinking like, you ever be like, all right, come on, little guy, let's get in here. And then later on you eat it,
Yeah, and the way
but
I
this
think
is like,
about
there's a conversation happening with these guys.
Absolutely, and I realize that this is a way bigger topic than just like relating it to Star Wars. But like when living on a cattle farm, I know that the modern cattle that we have now don't exist in nature. They were bred that way. So it's not like you're depriving an animal of a life that it would have lived, right? But the way that we do it on our farm in Whipple is, one cow feeds our family for a year. We have 500 head of cattle. My dad doesn't do that so he can feed 500 families. He does it because, one, he enjoys it, and two, like, he is raising that herd, and that herd has gone on since, it's from the same lineage that when my grandpa first bought his cows,
Sure.
And like that goes on. That's, I don't know, to me that's like the beauty of farming is like, yes, you will slaughter one cow, but all these the 599 other ones are going to have a much better life. They're cared for, they're tended, they have pastures just open. They don't have to fear predators, that type of thing. So I understand the difference, but the Dringer are cruel about it. Like if I just like tortured a cow before I killed it and ate it,
Sure,
you ruin the meat if you do that.
Yeah. No, I mean,
yeah, but I don't know. There's just something about the way that the Dringer were like mocking the children as they were about ready to eat them is just very primal to me.
It felt like they look at them as lesser, right? Like that's kind of what it is. Like
yeah.
They don't look at them as being any kind of equal. So it's like meats,
Absolutely.
talky meats, too tough to chew, but I'm hungry,
Mm-hmm.
Like it was interesting, and I mean we're towards the end of the book with that, but
sure.
I did think that the way they combated the Drengir was interesting compared to the previous times that we've had to fight them.
Yes.
So, but we have our main character, Jamama, which I was like, okay, that's a name.
The Jedi mechanic.
Yeah, the Jedi mechanic.
I like his setup. He's like, I don't want to go to the fair. I just want to work on my bike or whatever he's working on, you know?
He's like
and then because of that, he's the only Jedi available.
Yeah. So I thought it was interesting. Like this one here, like the Rising Storm happened. If you guys read that one, like there's the terrible attack from the Nihil attacking Valo, and this Jedi happens to be around and gets notification that there's a communications tower that has been disabled or having issues, so he has to go and investigate it.
Yeah.
And this just kind of pairs with like communications being out on Valo and why help doesn't come right away.
Sure.
And this guy's whole adventure is trying to make sure that there can be communications to battle against the Nihil. But with that, he had like a few friends, like the V-18, which I didn't realize right away. It was later that I realized that the cover of the book, like on the Audible thing, is like, wait, is that the robot there that he's flying on?
Yes.
And it looks much more like a gonk in a way than it did what I was thinking it looked like.
You know, sometimes we have Nexus, he's in the chat, who helps us out with the order in which we read things. And one of my favorite things that he does is he provides like images for us sometimes. It's like, hey, this is what this character looks like. And I saw the title of the book, and then I saw the image of the droid, and I was like, that's just, and it was just cropped small. I'm like, oh, that's them. That's cool. But yeah, I think the utility of being able to ride your droid is great.
Yeah. Well, and even the two little, what were they called? Bombats? Or
yes.
What was, like
they're
those?
like the big bat thing, or the small bat thing.
They're in that picture too, and I didn't realize it right away. And I was like, oh, they're right there. But they're like these little gremlin dudes who help fix up and work on V-18, but they speak some other language, but usually it's just they say rude stuff and we don't know what they're saying. So I thought it was kind of funny with them too.
Good.
But
it had a fun tone that I enjoyed. Eventually enjoyed. I think in the beginning it took me a bit to kind of like get into it.
Sure.
You know.
No, I get that too. One of the things I liked the most about the book, I think, was like its theme focusing on the idea of the parts to the whole. Like that was a thing. Like his master, Kumpar or something like that. I think Master Kumpar.
That sounds right.
Like had this saying where it was like you must look at the whole, but like each part and understand how it works with it. And one of the things, like you were talking about, the difference in tone.
Yeah.
One moment I really liked in this was when they were kind of, I guess, flying above this disaster of the Nihil attacking Valo, and they were like, we need to save all these people. We're just flying away, and we should help these people and save as many as we can. And he takes a moment to look at the whole, where it's like, we need communication.
Yeah.
We need to be able to get help. We need to be able to contact each other so that we can battle this. For the whole, I need to ignore my want to do this and go do that. And I was like,
get to that tower.
Yeah, and I thought that was a neat
yeah
connection to that. And also I feel like they connected it to the Drengir, looking at parts and what the Nihil does and what the whole is and what are they after.
Sure,
and this deal the Nihil gave, like, you'll get this whole planet if you go and eat this tower, you know, like that was kind of the deal they gave them. And I just thought like that little theme kind of circling around for Ram was done pretty well. Like, I mean, it's a junior novel and everything, but I thought it had a nice theme in it.
I really do like that. I wasn't really thinking about that, but yeah, look at the whole, but you also have to acknowledge the individual parts too, and like how they work together, how those systems work together. Like,
which is great for a mechanic. Like that's why he's saying those to him, but it goes further than just being a mechanic for him.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's maybe it might be relevant to our discussion later, where like you have individuals that have feelings about media, and then they go into a system of an algorithm that's designed to pump out engagement, you know, and everything just kind of gets like lost in translation. I feel like so. A pretty good lesson to learn from our Jedi Master this time.
I thought the story elements that we had with Zine and Lula were good. I like getting a little bit more story with them.
Yeah,
we had I think they were in 5 comics that we read through. That's coming out soon.
Yeah.
And it also had little mentions to elements of that. They even went to a planet from that being involved. Talked about a person who was missing.
Yeah.
And a lot of that all happened in that comic series. And they referenced that, but them trying to figure out how to battle the Nihil, and they're kind of investigating this and fall into coming to Valo to help because of this communications. Yeah. Which I thought the communication that they did was great. Like Ram trying to figure out how to like mind trick this Nemodian captain. Yeah, I thought that was fun.
Yeah, it's fun to watch younger Jedi do what we see the other Jedi do, no problem. Yeah, like learning how to do those things. But that was really fun.
Yeah, and just like the way he talked was great too.
And I mean, well, you might have a note for it later, but I really enjoy having a person like around Jedi that's not a Jedi but is a Force user.
Yeah,
like that's so cool.
No, I thought so too. With Zine.
Zine, yeah. I mean, from the comics. And
Ram
stuff,
even looks at him like, and he's like, well, maybe I shouldn't say that or anything. He's like, I'm not a Jedi.
Yeah, you know, but like, it's a great way to like have the Jedi characters be able to like vent in a way they can't to other peers of the Jedi, but also somebody that, hey, when the going gets tough, this person knows how to use their feelings to protect themselves and others.
They're just someone else with Force connection. They're not a Jedi. They're not a Sith. They're just there, but they want to help.
Yeah. I like the idea that, you know, despite her being too old or you know, any other reason they're not training her, like she's not abandoned.
Yeah. Well, and her, cool. I believe her people they don't like the Jedi.
Yes, her people hate the Jedi. She was raised to hate them, so there's also that added wrinkle too. Yeah, so she has nowhere to go.
Yeah, her inner struggle there, like she kind of leaves her stuck, you know. So no, I like that as well.
Yeah, sure.
I also like, and I think this is really good, maybe even for a kids novel, maybe for adult novels too. But there was a moment where Lula got to work with Vern.
Yeah.
And one, I thought it was cool that Vern, I think she's like 16 in this book, because she's like the youngest Jedi Knight that they've had, right?
Sure.
But Lula expecting to be kind of told what to do is given kind of a, what do you want to do? Where should we go? How do we do this?
Yeah.
And like she's kind of given lead by Vernestra.
Oh yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. But also there's an element of Lula talking about the envy, that like the jealousy she kind of feels towards Vernestra.
Yeah.
And I was like, in shows and movies and stuff, like there's always a talk about no connections and controlling your emotions and stuff, but that doesn't mean that they don't have it. And I think too, for like kids, like you're gonna have these different emotions and stuff, and it's trying to figure out how to control these and how to lean into them when you can, or how to pull away from it when you shouldn't. And I thought it was interesting.
I've always loved Anakin's episode 2 talk with Padme on the transport to Naboo, where he's talking about like, I thought Jedi forbidden to have love. It's like, no.
It's encouraged.
Love's great. Like that's compassion. That's unconditional love. Like we want that, and we strive to protect it. It's the most important thing for light and life. You know, I've loved that scene. But I think about that often, a lot, with at least the way Anakin, who we know isn't necessarily the perfect Jedi, has that. Despite if he truly believes it or not, like still has that imparting to Padme. I really like that scene. Mm-hmm. But I think about that often when I think of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else did I have? We also had a little bit of Ty tossed into this, right?
Yes.
I think that's her name, right? From the first, the Rising Storm. She's the Jedi for hire, the Saber for hire.
Yeah.
But Ram we had met very briefly in Rising Storm when Ty was in her jail cell.
Yeah, I had to, when I first started reading, I had to be like, wait, I know Ram. Who's Ram again? You know, but that's the thing about, at least for me, is sometimes Star Wars is such a visual language for me that when I'm reading the novels, I have to really work hard for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So after failing succeeding and failing his mind trick, he ends up getting put in jail.
Yeah.
And is there with Ty and whoever Ty was working for. I forget what the name was. It was like the Dr. Evil scientist person, right? And they're in the cells together and stuff. But we also get a little bit more of Ty after they break out.
Yeah.
And kind of like should we let her go, should we not? Mm-hmm. But the thing I thought that was really cool was that Ty kind of showed up one more time a little bit later.
Yeah.
And we figured out where the mother of these flying dragon worm things goes. And I was like, oh, because like I remember them talking about, like, oh no, there's 3 of them. There's a mom too. Yeah. But then like they came back, it's like, oh, you're giving us this dragon. It's like, no, it's mother. And I was like, whoa.
The bigger shadow comes over.
The Sandval, I think is what they're called, or something like that. Like I thought that was really neat.
Yep.
But yeah, it was just bringing in Ty, and Ty was one that I was really interested in Rising Storm. Agreed. So just trying to get a little bit more of their story, I thought was really cool to have too.
My favorite part of the whole book, at least the one that made me laugh the most, that I had a good time with, was it was towards the end where the droid's like, but if we do that, then you'll take out my vocal cords and I won't be able to speak. And everybody like pauses, and he goes, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was a very 3PO moment.
Yeah.
It felt like to me. It just felt real classic Star
I think
Wars.
that's too, like I pictured him much more of like a protocol looking kind of droid. So whenever I was like, I realized like, oh, he looks more like this box.
Yeah, right.
I was like, that's not at all what I thought he was.
More
of
a personality thing as opposed to,
I also loved, it was around that same time whenever they were, it was the Drengir. And they were like, furry meats with flamethrowers or fire or whatever. I was like, ooh.
That was funny too. Yeah. They're sharing their shiny swords.
Yeah. I had a question for chat because it was towards the end of the book.
Okay.
And this is more so probably for anyone who read it rather than listened to it.
Sure.
Because that was why I had this issue.
Oh, okay. Because we do the audiobook.
Yeah, I've been doing the audiobook for all these. But there's a fight where Lula is fighting Nihil, who are coming on like speeders and spacecraft and stuff. And at one point when they were talking about some of them, and one of them that came in, what they called it was an R-Wing.
Yeah, I remember that.
And my mind initially jumped to Star Fox because they fly R-Wings. And then I was like, wait, no. It's probably like an R-Wing, like an X-Wing or a Y-Wing or something like that. But then I was like, I wonder how they spell it. And I tried to search, and I couldn't figure out what to search to really find this on Google.
Okay.
And I wasn't sure if anyone who actually read the book in chat, like when reading it, was it spelled like an R with wing, or was it spelled like A-R? Because I think R-Wings from Star Fox are spelled A-R wing. So I was wondering how they spelled it.
I thought he said Arwen, like Lord of the Rings.
Okay, they were spelled it R-wing. Okay, I was curious on that because I was like, dude, if this is supposed to be like a Star Fox reference, because that's just where my mind first went to. But I'm like, since I can't read it, I don't know how they spelled it. So I don't know if it's probably just like, there's 2 versions of the V-Wing, I think, in between like Star Wars Rogue Squadron and like the prequel era of Star Wars. And I was like, it might just be one of those things. But I thought about that when they first said R-Wing. I was like, wait, they say an R-Wing? But
is it to imply that Arabesh, like the main language of Star Wars, like did they call letters the same as we call them? Their letters are different. But like you can also, and I've seen people do this, and I've done it a little bit too. Like you can kind of look at Arabesh and be like, oh, I see it. I can read it actually a little bit.
I want to study it a little bit more to try to just read it right off hand. But yeah, you can kind of see it a little bit.
I just wonder if do they call that an X? And it looks like this, and then they're looking at. I don't know.
Like here's the letter in Arabic, but they say X.
See,
I don't know.
It's fun details like that. That one, why would anybody ever talk about that? It's a movie. Shut up. But 2, like you can sometimes find what appears to be a contradiction in how a thing is presented, and you can either like say, "Oh, it sucks now," or you can be like, "Well, how can we make it work?"
Gotcha.
I don't know. I kind of find how can we make it work to be far more fun.
More fun.
Yeah.
Sure, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Nexus says that it's high galactic.
High galactic
is what
is like English.
Is what the English
Gotcha.
like letters are.
Yeah.
So high galactic versus.
I always love that Dragon Ball Z abridged moment when Nail's they're like. He's speaking to Meki and to Frieza, and then Frieza's like, "I can't understand you. What are you saying?" Like, fine, I'll speak in the universal language. And he goes, "English."
Universal language of the galaxy or whatever. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But no, overall, like I thought the book, like I don't have a ton to say. I thought the book was done fairly well. I thought it was a really good, like junior novel. I liked a lot of the themes they had with it. I'm excited about one was Ram wanting to branch out from his mechanic job on this planet and actually go and visit like the galaxy. So he wants to go with like Zine and Lula and expand out with that. I'm like, okay, well that'd be cool because we'll get to see him more in other aspects of the High Republic, maybe in the next novels or whatever, or maybe even the comics. But I also thought like for the Drengir, like I'm pretty sure they kind of talked with them and was like, hey, can you go fight the Nihilists instead because they kind of lied to you? And I was like, man, I don't think we really had that battle for. Like with the Drengir, I don't think we've ever had that happen. And it was like these kids talked these Drengir into doing something else.
Yeah.
And I was like,
they did.
Okay, well that was interesting. Well, I have not seen that before, so I thought that was pretty cool for a moment in this book.
And again, I just terrified the Drengir because they were all pissed off that the Nihil were like killing people. Like, no, you said we could eat them. They're all mad.
They were mad that they were killing people when it's like they're ruining our meats, you know. So yeah, no, it was. Kind of funny, but also like it's also kind of scary at the same time. So I get that.
Yep. Yeah, fun book. I'm ready to sink my teeth back into something a little meaty.
Something meat.
Meat. Yes. We got Star Wars Explain in the chat.
Oh, Star Wars Explain. Thank you so much.
Molly, but
I didn't get to read what they said here. Gonk, do you want me to check that part out there?
I think they're talking to the good people at YouTube that are having a lively debate.
Oh, awesome. All right. Just keep it nice in the chat, guys.
Yeah, keep it cool in the chat. We're here to have a fun time. Regardless of your opinions, it's still cool to have a fun conversation that's not super heated.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But for the next book, do you want to say that now?
So the next book we'll be covering is going to be Battlefront 2 Inferno Squad. Now, this is going to be a book much like the Rogue One novel, Catalyst, that we read. People read Catalyst and then went and saw Rogue One in theaters. You could read Battlefront 2 and then go play the game. And I don't know if it's necessarily intended that way. Because it's Star Wars, you can come at it from any direction, you know.
Sure.
But from what I understand, most people, when this came out, read it first and then played the game. So I'm going to go into it with that mindset this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I might have to.
I'm excited for it.
Either replay or kind of like get a story again.
Yeah.
To kind of see.
Battlefront 2. Yeah, Battlefront 2. Like story stuff.
Yeah.
It's small. You know, like it's not like the most robust, but it has some really fun moments and really fun characters that. I'm hoping I get to see more of.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. So Battlefront next time.
Yep.
Inferno Squad. Nexus says, how did you feel about the conversations between Vernestra and Lula regarding Vernestra's prodigy status and Lula's attachment? Love that stuff, which I did kind of touch on a little bit. I think that's some of the jealousy and stuff that she had for Vernestra and like how quickly she's moving through everything. But I did enjoy that as well. That was one of the parts of the book that really kind of stood out to me, was
really
touching on that kind of stuff.
It's really cool. I mean, we just talked a second ago about like seeing Star Wars from different angles and like you can come at it in different directions. Some kids might watch the Clone Wars first, or we had someone talk about how Rebels was their first thing they ever watched.
Yeah, which was
Venestra Rowe, now that we've watched The Acolyte and we kind of see like where she is there, it's really fun to compare here and imagine the arc, the journey of how she got from here to there. And I don't know, I've been enjoying that part of the High Republic, especially when comparing it with the Acolyte, because you don't get a whole lot of like, oh, you know, the High Republic where you can be really super rewarded watching this show. You get a little bit, you know, like mention of the hyperspace disaster and stuff. But by design, you don't need to, you know.
Yeah,
it's just,
it has to be disconnected enough that you don't have to know that. That way you can get, you know, people who don't read the books involved.
As much as the prequel trilogy must in reference the original trilogy, it also must be a movie on its own.
Sure.
A trilogy on its own.
Yeah. You want the prequel trilogy to be like for the next generation, and then hopefully they watch the original trilogy as well. But if they haven't, you don't want them to be too lost.
I've always respected that about George, is that he's always making a thing for the people now, not necessarily making a thing for the people then.
Sure.
You know? And he gets in a lot of trouble for that. He went through a lot of grief because of that. But I think it eventually it lasts.
Yeah.
You know, because he has something to say. I really enjoyed that part.
Yeah, I agree. Next it says, what did you think of Ram's Droid V18? I loved his constant upgrades. Reminded me of a stupid character my GM created in our D&D game, LOL.
And that's from
Star Wars Explained on YouTube.
Gotcha.
Oh, thank you, Nexus.
Thank you so much. I love that droid.
I was surprised whenever I realized that it was on the cover of the book and stuff.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely liked him. He did have a very 3PO kind of vibe about him in the way he talked, and like you said, the one joke and stuff they made. But each time he came back, like I just thought it was so funny where it's like, oh, here's what new thing. Now he's got wings and missiles and a flamethrower, you know? Oh, what, you put an engine on a droid? You know, like the mechanical upgrades that I guess more so it was the Bombats that did it, and I like those little guys too. So it's like that's a little team, and I enjoyed that little trio a lot.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun.
I loved the upgrading nature of the droid, and honestly, I enjoyed it so much that I was kind of thinking while I was reading about how R2 as an astromech, you know, the way they're designed. I mean, we have to remember too. In 1977, that's just what it looked like. You know, there wasn't a whole lot of thought put into why he looks that way. But the idea is that an astromech can be socketed into other things, right?
Yeah.
But we see that so rarely. They go into ships, and Mandalorian one time had lava battle bot that an astromech was in. You know.
Oh, yeah.
But I always thought, is it kind of like a missed opportunity not to have more astromech slots? I mean, they're their extender arm thing will go in and interact with everything. Yeah, but I just always thought it'd be cool to have more of that in Star Wars.
Like more, like what do you mean? More?
I don't really know.
Like more?
I was just tickled. I delighted when I saw that thing you could put your astromech in, and now it can walk around and do more utility work. You know, maybe you could have here. You know, it's like
you want more.
It's like an accessory for your phone. Here's the load lifter version that you can have. Here's the maintenance. You want load out.
Astromechs can dock into things and do something different, right?
Yeah.
Like there's one that looks what is it, Mandalorian, where it's it looks like I think it looks like an astromech on a land speeder. Like it's pushed into there, right?
Yeah.
So you see the little dome, but you could have him doing all kinds of stuff.
Sure.
But
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know why they don't do that. It'd be kind of cool. And then you can just make things where it fits all. But then you got to make sure it's universal.
Yeah.
USB-C.
But yeah, thanks for the question.